Good day, podcast community. PeteKane here, podcast Pete and certified lifestyle coach. And we have a special guest, another coach, somebody you're going to want to get to know. So I'm Kathy. Tell our viewers who you are, what you do, and who you serve, and then we'll get into our podcast.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I am Kathy Giardo. I am in Savannah, Georgia. I grew up in the Chicago area. And when I went to the University of Illinois and met my first husband, my parents were really unhappy because he was from the South. Mm-hmm. And when I say South, I mean Southern Illinois. Who knew then that I would be moving to Savannah, Georgia, which I did in 1990, and I've been here ever since. So I am, first and foremost, I am Nana.
Mm-hmm.
And everything everybody ever said about that is true and more. You know, my life is just these two amazing, adorable creatures. Ruby will be 2 in July, and Wes just turned 5. So
great ages.
You know, everything is in the context of that, and that, you know, having grandchildren just totally changes your perspective on hope for the future.
Yes.
So I thank God every day for those 2 children. They're just amazing. And my 2 children are 31 and 21, Abby and Parks, and they both live still in the area. Thank goodness. Otherwise, I'd have to move.
Yes.
So I spent, though, after graduate school, I took a position working in student services, which is what I thought I would do. And I came to an art and design college, which was, and still is, just an amazing institution. And I really fell in love with what they were doing for students. And so anything they had asked me to do, I'm sure I would have done it. They could have said, would you please pay for parking lots? And I'd be like, okay. But they asked me if I would start an HR department. Didn't have one at the time. And so that became a wonderful opportunity for me where I was able to learn a lot. And it led to, you know, after 10 years of running that department and knowing I wanted to stay in the area, I wasn't sure, could I make a whole career of being just in one place and never going anywhere else? And so a mentor kind of coached me to say, well, why don't you go into manufacturing and do HR there? It'll help kind of round you out. And so that's what I did. And so I spent 32 years in corporate human resources in a leadership position. In 2022, after COVID, honestly, the wheels that started turning that I can see now, when COVID hit, you know, I was responsible for COVID protocols at college campuses in 8 states. And I mean, I was spending every day on the phone with lawyers and, you know, in the middle of it, trying to figure out as a university how to thrive in such difficult times. However, there were all these think tanks that were kind of cropping up because everybody was online. And I started participating in some of those. And I started asking the question, you know, what have we learned during COVID? How can we leverage that? What are the lessons learned that can help us be even better? And, you know, I thought, and I started saying to my employer, why can't we be that employer? Why can't we be the ones that say, we don't want you to feel like a hostage here. We want you to be here because you want to be. We care about who you are. You know, that's where really I got ignited, was in thinking about possibilities, given the fact that the landscape of the workforce had changed and was changing so much. And, you know, you mentioned layoff when we were talking earlier. And as an HR person, layoffs are like, you know, I've sat on both sides of that table. That we told our employees we were going to do 1 layoff, 1 and done. And then we did 7. And somehow at the end of that, I just had the clarity, maybe bravery, I guess, to say, you know what, I think my husband's, he's 8 years older than me. I think I need to learn to work differently because I won't be able to be a 60, 70 hour a week person. It won't balance, I need to work, but I'm not sure that's going to work. And really, I just entertained the idea of sort of hanging my own sign. And I had no idea what that was going to mean, But, so I resigned and I ended up, I'm fortunately blessed with an amazing sister who's so supportive of me all the time. And she was like, go get a coach. You've been busting your butt for years, for decades. Go get a coach. Let's see what you really feel like you want to do for this next stretch. And I did. And that person ultimately introduced me to coaching. And, I still have the notes from my conversation with her. And we are still in touch. But, it's been a journey. So that was in August of 2022. And since then, I have built a healthy, I wouldn't say thriving or sustainable yet, because I realize who knows what's thriving and who knows what's sustainable. But, I have clients, I'm a coach. I've enjoyed being in school. I think I'll always be in school.
Yeah.
But I also found the Rotary. And that's because, one of the things I did when I walked away from HR, I'd known a lot of other lawyers and judges and HR people who were volunteering at our local mediation center. And I understand that. You want to kind of keep yourself in the work. And so I started volunteering there. And then I went through their training and became a mediator. And subsequently was asked, hey, we're starting this Rotary Club up, a satellite club that's going to be just on peace building. And here I am. I've been working with conflict resolution and alternative dispute resolution plans, for decades. And I was like, okay, well, maybe, but I didn't know a thing about Rotary. And that kind of goes back to the kind of not seeing the world you don't see.
Yep.
And I remember another person at the mediation center saying to me, what a different paradigm it is to be a volunteer. Because you come to the situation, you have something to offer, you have something valuable to offer.
Yep.
And people who need that, they want that. And so they facilitate it. And you no longer have a boss or a manager.
Yeah.
You have a cause, or a service opportunity. And it's just, I'd never been in those shoes. I was always an employee.
Yeah.
And so through that, though, so through mediating and then the Rotary, that is how my world has opened up. And it's making it possible for me to do things like build my business as a coach, take care of my mother who has Alzheimer's. I would have had to hire somebody. It's Alzheimer's is a tough and long road, but because I'm now in this different world of not knowing every day what the next day is going to bring, that's perfect with her. That's where she is too.
Yeah.
So, so I'm a coach. I'm very involved in Rotary. I have found it to be just like many other things. Once I started getting involved in Rotary, I realized that I must have been carrying around sort of a preconceived notion about what is Rotary.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I was like, well, what is this even going to be? And I just found myself being like in shock and awe as I learned more, as I just met more people. And I was like, gosh, you know what? There are just millions of people who just, all they want to do is do good in the world.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And because we are kind of like, you hear all the news stuff and they're going to cycle a lot of negative things and things that capture your attention. You don't know about the world of service.
No.
And when I was in Rotary 25 years ago and I had to step away because of just not being able to get there every week. But then when I came back in a few years ago, 3 years, 4 years ago, I saw the transformation that had happened. Very diverse, and as you know, you spoke at our club, there's a lot going on, a
Yeah.
lot of service. And I want to go to like that transition. I'll get to service in just a second, but I want to ask you, it's always a transition from working for somebody else to working for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
When you're working for somebody else, you get that paycheck every Friday or every month, whatever it is, it comes in whether you do anything. I mean, you got to perform, but you
Yeah.
know it's coming in. How difficult was it for you to go to now you have to create that value and there's no paycheck if Kathy doesn't create value? How did you handle that transition?
Well, I'd say I'm still handling it.
Okay.
And honestly, like what, as an employee, you have goals that are set in partnership with the leadership and you have something you're working towards. But in life, I mean, you can look at your actions and where you're spending your time and see what kind of goals are you living toward?
Mm-hmm.
And I realized one of the big things for me after leaving corporate America was realizing that, having to be more intentional and purposeful in my own self, in my own body, with who I am, with what I'm gifted at and what I'm not gifted at,
Mm-hmm.
coming up with my own sense of purpose and my own goals that were not tied to someone else's
Mm-hmm.
is still, a huge opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I've had some time, I can look back and I can see that although I might not be able to answer you in like a financial planning meeting of what are my goals for my business in the year 2026, I can see by the way I have lived
Mm-hmm.
that since 2022, I am living the goal, which is to be in a position to say yes to things like caring for my mother,
Mm-hmm.
joining Rotary,
Mm-hmm.
singing in my church choir.
Mm-hmm.
My business is good, but I don't have to be a top earner. I just need enough. And so I'm living toward that end.
Mm.
And, it's a very different way to live. I tell people all the time, I'm like, I've never worked harder. I've never been more poor.
Yeah.
And I've never all three things.
Yes.
And, that's very daunting to me, the idea that, okay, if I'm not doing something, nothing's being done. I have to be always doing something towards the business, something towards making money. And I was in a coaching class with some other professionals, when somebody asked me to really consider as a corporate employee, like, was I making it something happen every minute of every day that I was working? Were there not meetings that were kind of useless? Were there not countless numbers of conversations in the stairwell?
Mm-hmm.
Were there, yet we kind of, or I at least, had kind of told myself the story that like I was always on the beam and that I was always working and always doing something. I would even tell my family, it's been another end-to-end day, no breaks, But the truth is, as human beings, we have to have different ways of existing during the day. It's just you can't exist just doing one mode all the time. Or for me, I mean, I would go nuts.
Yeah. I agree.
So yeah, I mean, I still struggle that I feel like I need to always be doing something about my business or nothing's being done at the same time. Maybe the biggest lesson that I've learned is that for many, many years, I was placing my bets on the corporation.
Mm.
I felt that I had job security, I had benefits, and as long as I stayed in that lane, everything would be fine. And today, what am I betting on? Just myself.
Yes.
And like God, which I promise you, betting on God is really a good idea.
It's a good one to bet on.
It's a good idea. So, but the thing is, I mean, it was just an illusion of security because companies can and do fail, and they can and do make poor decisions, unfair decisions, or just unwise decisions. But I have been working since I was 14.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if you're a betting person, I'm a good bet.
Yeah. We never know what we're capable of doing until we're put in a position to do the possibilities. There's a gentleman in my Rotary Club, and we had this conversation maybe a year and a half ago, and he'd always been a W-2, and now he was a 1099, and he always, just what you said, he felt the security of a W-2, but he realized that wasn't the security because he was laid off like a couple of times.
Yeah.
And then he realized the joy of a 1099. Now, he's now going to be the president in a couple of years. He's leaned into servicing. He has flexibility. Like you're saying, go take your mom needs you, and you can, and you don't have to ask for permission to go take care of your mom. You can go to your Rotary. You're not saying, hey, can I please go to the Rotary? You do
making a case for how it's going to benefit me and the organization.
Exactly. And you make those choices. What do you think? What was the thing you discovered about Kathy in that journey? Like, was it anything that you didn't know and that you discovered as you transitioned from corporate to being in coaching and being on your own and doing your own thing?
That's a good question. I think I'm learning that all the time. But one of the most impactful things for me is that I had been bartering away my value voluntarily, meaning I knew that I was a good mom. I knew that I was a good employee. I knew that I was a good wife. But I bartered with those. Some people may say I took it for granted. I took those things for granted that I was secure and that would be there forever, and then gave myself to something that I thought I needed to in order to survive. And I never realized how much that sort of pull was holding me during my whole, all those years. And, it makes you look back on all the extra things, the extra time, the weekends, I always tell this example. My daughter had braces. I never met the orthodontist.
Really?
I was too important. My job was too important. My husband did all of that. So, subsequently, my kids have been really, really blessed with wonderful fathers. So, but everything happens for a reason. So I'm not like maudlin about it, but I bartered as if there were something there to barter. Like I have a certain amount of value and I'm going to go ahead and keep investing in this over here because I think that's what I need to do. Whereas now, I realize that where I spend my time and what I invest in, if those are not one and the same, the things that are most important to me and my values, then something is amiss.
Yeah.
The biggest lesson I learned was that I never even got to ask that question.
Yep.
For decades.
Yeah.
I was just doing, I was just like on the hamster wheel. So,
yes.
And so, but now I can ask that question. And, I have a coach today. And so my coach will ask me, I'll be 60 this year. And you need to look at the years and look at the future to the extent you can and think, what is it you want to be doing?
Yes.
And that's a question that is a real luxury to be able to even ask.
Yeah.
So, maybe that's the fruits of all my labor. I'm not sorry for the experiences that I've had. I've learned a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I think we underestimate the skills we learn in that environment. And
Yeah.
we now have the ability to lean into them, to learn even at a faster pace and impact more, because you're right about I have 6 granddaughters, and 4 of them, they're well, all of them are within driving distance. But I block off on my calendar. They homeschool 2 days a week over on this side of town. Just I'm there if they need it, and just to be able to drop and schedule it, because I can schedule it, can go out on dates with them, and have that flexibility where I don't have to ask anybody if I can take off. I just do it. And it is that freeing, feeling, because they grow up fast. Your
They
kids
do.
grow up fast. And so
They do.
life is precious, and we don't have as much time as we think. I
Right.
had this stroke 4 years ago, and I had a wake-up call because it could have been over. So I approach things differently. I approach every day like it could be my last, because it almost was. And
I
that
get that.
being present and doing the things that you want to do to impact, whatever it is, changes your whole mindset.
It does.
What do you do, like, when it comes to, like, leaning into Kathy? Like, what are you doing? Anything that you could share with our viewers? Do you meditate? Do you journal? Do you do anything that helps your, feed Kathy, feed your mindset?
I do a bunch of things like that, but the one that came to my mind while you were talking, especially when we're talking about being intentional and about time. Well, I've done it. I have blocked my calendar off for 2 hours every single day, and it only has to do with picking up my grandson.
Mm.
Once in a while, I can't. I've got a client or something, and I need to get in there. But so yeah, being more intentional. But something that I've been able to do that's way more impactful in a way that I'm sure I have not realized entirely. I sing in the choir. And I did that when I was a kid. I did it growing up. As a young adult, I didn't even go to church. Who could? I mean, I was busy. But I sing in the choir. And I've been fortunate to have some really talented and amazing musicians who are also church ministers in the music area. I was with one choir for 15 years. Now I've been with another for like 6 or 7 years. And I have been able to tell these directors, which is so true, that they have really discipled me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that in just a Christian way. That happens to be the religious upbringing that I have. And I think wherever you are in the world, we have a divine nature, and we seek it out through various human constructs. And I'm quite happy to say that one of mine is I go to church and I sing in the choir. But the reason it's not about performing. None of that really matters to me. It's about rehearsal and practicing. And so whatever you're out there doing, do it well. And so that I think is a very good thing to do, to aim for whatever it is you're doing. But also, I'm being very intentional with my time, because all of those words to all of those songs, many of them I've sang for decades. But by being in rehearsal, it's like meditation, because you're putting in your mind. Oh, and then if the choir director wants you to memorize something, then you're really doing it. But I mean, even during COVID, I was in a virtual choir. And so it was amazing to see that come together, because we would each record our own part, and then there were people who were better with technology than I am, who would put it all together, and our voices would be together, even though we were apart, which was such a spiritual experience, truly, no matter what your background is. So I think that I'm so grateful that today I can make choir such a big priority. And it's, you know, when I'm in my darkest moments or when I'm out for a walk or for a run, what comes into my mind?
Yeah.
Is it for the beauty of the earth?
Mm-hmm.
The only reason that's there is because I'm in choir practice and I sing that song. you know,
Yeah,
so
they say like the stats are that Americans watch 4 hours of TV and we scroll 2.5 hours of say TikTok videos. So we're consuming other people's lives, and I
yeah,
believe we're born to create. How
yeah.
does Kathy stay creative?
Well, I'm also an artist, and so I have to say that I've gone through long dry spells in my life where I just haven't felt like making anything. And I do have a fine arts degree in metalsmithing. I was at a Big Ten university, University of Illinois, and then I went to graduate school in Carbondale, got a master's degree in higher ed. Um, I forgot where I was going with that now. I got distracted.
Staying creative. How does Kathy
That's
stay?
right. So, I mean, when I was a student, it was easy because, I had assignments and I needed to do things. But then when I ended up in a career that had nothing to do with my art and design, it's something I picked up and put down
Yeah.
here and there. And I've had periods during the last, well, when I had a medical leave because I was having a foot surgery,
Mm-hmm.
my husband, he was like, "You're going to kill somebody." So because I had to be off my feet. It was like a bunion surgery. I had to be off my feet for like 3 weeks. And I was a marathon runner at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? He just got me some watercolors and some watercolor paper, and it just sat there on the dining room table. And I just looked at it and maybe got a bit angry until the day that I picked it up. And so for years, so from like 2015 until somewhere around COVID, I was painting all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a body of work, And then somehow during COVID, I just lost my interest.
Mm-hmm.
But recently, having become actual empty nesters now, which is
Mm-hmm.
not easy. My husband has invested in me. We have invested in me in getting a new office together for me, which is where I'm sitting now. And I have a table there that I can use to paint. And I'm kind of putting myself in a position to be able to take that back up again.
Yeah.
But even without painting or making things, I'm creative every day. I mean, I certainly was with my kids. I would always organize their food into different, they all joked about it. How much of a smiley face can you make with a banana and peanut butter? But, I'm hoping, I feel like that may be kind of a part of me that's a bit unfed, that I'm really hoping to be able to tap into here,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those choices of pursuing things that fill us up, whether it's serving, whether it's just learning different things. That I went to my 50th high school reunion recently, and they were all saying, "Pete, when are you going to retire?" And I said, "Never, never." And here's what I've read a bunch of books on it, and they say one of the things that is very beneficial is if let's just say you're in HR and you retire, what you don't want to do is become an HR consultant because you've done that your whole life. Do something completely different. It challenges the brain. It allows us to have that like kid instinct where kids just want to learn. They're always being this, "Hey, I want to do this. I want to do that." But as we get older, we kind of fall away from that and we're not as much. So, learning something new, like doing coaching after doing HR, just challenges the brain. So how do you challenge yourself today versus when you were working in corporate America?
So I think that it's in the area of being able to say yes. So there are some big breakouts that I've had in my life that I would describe the way you've been describing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and certainly music is a huge part of my artistry. I played the piano, the clarinet, the viola. I always sang. And so now I'm singing. And a few years ago, I said yes to going to sing in a choir at Carnegie Hall. And we rehearsed for months and months. And then when we were all there together, like 200 of us, we had these really intense rehearsals during the day, as we were getting ready for the performance. And so that was so because I said yes, there were other people involved who were singing with me, but the director, I was able to work with somebody who could pull my experience as just a part singer in a choir to something really exemplary. And because she was an artist, she had the ability to help move us into that. And so I think because I've had that experience, it's made me very aware of how important it is. And, going to Kosovo and Serbia, talk about being a kid again. I mean, and this was a Rotary opportunity for me to work on a global grant, but I was just, everything was new. At my age, who can do such a thing?
Yeah.
And this summer, I am going to be singing in the American Choir for World Peace in Normandy on D-Day.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, I never would have been able to say yes to something like that. It wouldn't have even come across my desk. But like I said, I'm fortunate. I sing in a choir with a director who's an exemplary musician, and he's been given the honor to produce this choir. And so he has people, almost 100 of us from all over the world. And many of us are here in Savannah, but not everybody. So the practices are virtual and in person. And, we're going to sing on the beaches of Normandy that day. And then we will be singing in other locations throughout France. We're going to sing at Notre Dame. And we will be representing the United States of America.
Wow.
And that will be such an honor and such a privilege. But again, something I could never even imagine. And so you talk about being like a kid and creativity and the world opening up in a way that you never thought it could. I'm very sure that that's going to be an amazing experience. And I don't know how I'm going to be able, I never know how I'm going to make these things happen. I'm planning to go back to Kosovo and Serbia in the fall. I don't know how I'm going to make that happen. But somehow it's going to happen.
Yeah. No, there's a lot to be said with setting. Like I'm a big fan. I read a lot. I never did, but I now have used a lot of AI with my reading. So my comprehension has gone way, way up. And 10x is better than 2x. And Benjamin Hardy, he wrote now, I think it's something to do with scaling. But he said, set huge goals and your mind will figure it out. So if we just set these little goals, we'll get little improvement. But if you set, I'm going to go to Normandy, you don't know how you're going to get there, you figure it out.
Yeah.
Have you had a time in your life that you failed, and then when you look back at it, it was a good failure that you learned a lot from?
Well, I would say one of the biggest, I feel like I failed, but I'm not really sure it was my failure or if it was just divine intervention, but it felt like a failure at the time. I mentioned that I was in corporate America for a long, long time, and I was, with layoffs and such, I was on both sides of the table. Well, in 2000, at the very end of 2015, I worked for a huge manufacturing company, and 1,000 people were laid off one day, including everyone in my department and everyone with my title. And I actually lost my mind a little bit. As I was leaving, there's no notice because that's how you do things. But I actually found myself, as I was leaving the property, being like, who is going to take care of my employees? What's going to happen to them? And then realizing, they decided not to pay for that anymore. And then I really kind of lost touch with reality. I thought they were going to call me. and say, you know what, we needed you to act like you were part of it. So thanks for playing the part, but of course you're not being laid off.
Yeah.
And I had only been promoted and recruited. And that experience was very difficult. But it helped me to learn where I was finding value, where was I finding worthiness.
Yeah.
And my husband asked me not too long after this, he was like, hey, what if we have to sell the house and downsize or whatever, what would be so wrong with just being my wife?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, for 2 days, I couldn't answer that question.
Wow.
And when I did, I was like, I don't know what to tell you. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I could tell you that right there I learned that lesson. But, eventually I got another corporate job and I began, you can find your enablers. And I did until I left again in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just been a process. But so what I would say it would be the learning there is that I thought it was my own failure.
Mm-hmm.
But then my actual failure had been to be looking for worthiness in the wrong place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I try not to do that today, but it's something like singing in the choir. I mean, it's something you have to be intentional about and then practice, because it doesn't come naturally, not to me. It does to some people. God bless them all.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What if you what you've learned in your journey, there's obviously lessons we learn. If you had to go back to a 20-year-old Kathy, what advice would you give her, knowing what you know today?
I think I would say go for broke. What's going to happen?
Yeah.
I would say you are enough.
Mm.
You are going to work for years and years trying to earn that worthiness, even unconsciously. And it's just, not everybody is fortunate enough to be plunked down in the middle of the Balkans, to have that lesson taught to them instantly. Like, oh my gosh, people are treating me like I'm a worthy human being, and they don't even know I'm the director of human resources. And so with that learning, I would try to impress upon my 20-year-old self that, I was enough. I was worthy just because I existed. And that things would work out. Like you said, come up with a big goal and then you just figure it out. I ran a marathon. I ran several hundred half marathons.
Mm-hmm.
And, that is an impossible feat to really consider.
Yeah.
But if you make the commitment and then you decide you're going to do it, amazingly, it can happen. I look back at it now and I'm like, how did I do that?
Yeah. You say there's marathon. A friend of mine's a marathon runner. I would always do the 10Ks, and I love the.
That's enough. 10Ks enough.
I enjoy it. And now he's having knee surgery and all this stuff. And I'm glad I didn't lean into it that much.
Yeah.
I was reading a guy, and I don't know what he's called, but he ran one marathon a day for
I don't understand that, but I've heard about that.
He has a cowboy hat. They showed him in our Rotary one time. It's mind-boggling to think how many this guy has run, and it just tells you what is possible. Because you think, no, I ran one marathon. I couldn't even run. I barely got through one, and this guy was running one every day. So it's just, we don't even know. Yeah. What is Kathy most excited about in the future?
I'm most excited about the people who I'm going to be able to help. Mm-hmm. And I mean that very inclusively, not somebody told me I had some sort of rough things that happened in my early childhood. And I remember being in college and taking a class, like a Psych 101 class or something, and talking with the faculty member about some of those tough things. And I remember her saying to me, "You are going to be able to help so many people because of that."
Yes.
And those words are coming back to me all the time now. And so it's not just that it'll be clients I'm coaching, but my grandchildren, my children, my husband, my friends. There is something really good inside of me, and I can put that to use.
Yeah.
And coaching, I mean, I am so fortunate. People say, you're not going to work another day in your life once you do something you love. But all of the things that I do in order to make it possible for me to be a coach, I mean, sitting down and coaching someone, it's always great.
Yes.
It's not hard. I don't have to gear up and be prepared.
Yes.
I just sit down and it's always good.
Yeah.
And, I enjoy it. And, maybe one day I will be able to just do that and combine it with being a volunteer. Maybe someday I can just coach people who would normally not be able to get coaching.
Yeah.
And then that would really bundle things for me in a way that would be super meaningful.
No, it's I think the world is changing rapidly. We all know AI is just turning the world upside down, and change is always difficult for people. And you mentioned about, we get wrapped up in our identity when we're working for somebody else. And I think that's going to be real difficult as 10,000, 20,000, all these people are going to be displaced. They have to find purpose.
Yeah.
And purpose is not in your title.
Yeah.
And it's easy when you're in that environment to think that. So making that transition and pouring into these people to help them get through that bridge of reality that you are enough. You are, and there's so much potential in each person. So I want to be respectful of your time, Kathy. Sure. So I tell our viewers how they can get a hold of you. Then I have one final question.
Okay. The easiest way to get in touch with me is to email me at Kathy@kathygcoach.com. Or you can go to kathygcoach.com. And you can think of me sort of running around at the first global coaching conference that I went to saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm Kathy G. Coach now. I'm Kathy G. Coach. I'm not even an HR director anymore."
Yes.
So good.
Yes. What would you say, what was the one thing you would want our viewers to take home from our time on this podcast?
There are people in your life who can reflect back to you worthiness. It might not be your family of origin. It might be a teacher. One of the things that a person can do is to gather more people like that around you and believe them. Put other things to the test. But believe the people who love you and support you.
That is beautiful. That is. Thank you so much, Kathy. We appreciate you taking the time to share with our community your journey and a little bit more about who Kathy is. And thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thank you.